I know this is hard.
What are we going to do?
We'll face it together.
You're not walking away from this!
Let go of me!
Not until you listen!
This is crazy!
I'm 22 years old, and I graduated from college not too long ago. For most of my life, my family has lived in the same house, a large 3-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seems to happen. Kids ride bikes in the street. Neighbors wave at each other while walking their dogs. It always felt safe. There are only 2 details about the house that really matter to this story. My bedroom is on the 2nd floor, and its window faces the street. My dad's home office is directly above it on the 3rd floor, and that room also has a window looking toward the street. Those 2 windows are important because, for reasons I still don't understand, strange things have been happening around our house for years, and now I'm starting to think none of it was random. The night my dad saw the car. The first event happened when I was still a kid. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I was definitely in middle school. One weekend morning, I walked downstairs for breakfast and overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My dad sounded tense. I heard him say something like, "It happened again last night." When they noticed me standing there, the conversation stopped immediately. I asked what they were talking about, but they brushed it off and told me it was nothing. A few days later, my older brother told me what had really happened. My dad is a lawyer, and sometimes he works late into the night when he has deadlines. On that particular night, he had been in his 3rd floor office finishing paperwork. Around midnight, he happened to glance out the window. A dark SUV was slowly moving down our street, and I don't mean normal slow driving. The car was barely moving at all. According to my dad, it looked like the driver wasn't pressing the gas pedal at all, like the vehicle was just slowly rolling forward. At first, he didn't think much of it, but about a minute later, the exact same vehicle drove past again, this time in the opposite direction. Then something even stranger happened. The SUV pulled over and parked directly across from our house. My dad watched it carefully for a few minutes, expecting someone to get out, but no one did. The car just sat there. Eventually, my dad went back to his work, occasionally glancing out the window out of curiosity. Hours passed. Around 2 in the morning, he fell asleep at his desk. When he woke up again at about 5:30 a.m., the SUV was still there, parked in the exact same spot. My dad said it made his stomach drop when he saw it. As far as he knew, no one had gotten in or out of that vehicle all night. Shortly before sunrise, the car finally drove away. At the time, my parents assumed it was probably someone sleeping in their car or maybe someone driving through neighborhoods looking for houses to rob. Eventually, everyone forgot about it, at least for a while. The night I saw the flashlights. Several years later, when I was 15, something happened that I experienced myself. Back then, I spent a lot of time in my room making music on my computer. My desk sat right next to my window, which meant I always had a clear view of the street outside. One night, I was working with my headphones on when I noticed something strange, a flicker of light outside. At first, I thought it might be headlights from a passing car. But when I looked again, I realized something was very wrong. 3 cars were slowly moving down our street in a line, and someone inside the vehicles was shining flashlights at the houses. The beams of light moved slowly across each property, like someone carefully studying them. When the light started moving toward my house, I instinctively dropped down below the window. A moment later, a bright beam passed across my ceiling. I stayed crouched there for about 20 seconds before slowly standing back up. By then, the cars were almost at the end of the street. A few seconds later, they turned the corner and disappeared. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I told my parents everything. My dad immediately assumed the cars were probably scouting houses for break-ins. Within a week, he installed security cameras around the house and motion lights in the backyard. For a while, everything seemed normal again, until something much stranger happened. The hidden camera. A couple of years later, my dad hired landscapers to redo part of our backyard. While trimming bushes along the fence line, one of the workers found something hidden deep inside the branches. It was a tiny camera, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. The device looked like it had been placed carefully where it could see a large portion of our backyard. The battery was completely dead by the time it was found. There was no memory card inside, no SIM card either, which meant it probably hadn't been storing video. Instead, it may have been transmitting footage wirelessly to someone nearby. That realization really upset my dad. Someone had clearly placed that camera on our property intentionally, and we had no idea when. My dad reviewed months of security camera footage from around the house, but never saw anyone placing it. Eventually, he reported the situation to the police, but without any evidence or fingerprints, there wasn't much they could do. Life moved on again. But now, we knew one thing for sure. Someone had been watching our house. The new neighbors. A few years later, our next-door neighbors moved away. Their house didn't stay empty long. Within a few weeks, a young couple moved in. At first, nothing about them seemed unusual, but something about their behavior slowly started to bother me. Late at night, I would occasionally notice them standing at the window on the top floor of their house, and more than once it looked like they were staring into our backyard. They weren't sitting at desks. They weren't doing anything else, just standing there, watching. At least, that's what it felt like. I told myself I was probably being paranoid. But one night, while walking my dog past their house, I noticed something that stuck with me. Through their large kitchen window, I could see them sitting at the table, and there was another man with them. He stood out immediately. The guy was bald, extremely muscular, and had unusually thick eyebrows. Something about his appearance was just memorable. As I walked past the house, the woman suddenly got up and pulled the curtains closed. None of them looked directly at me, but the timing felt strange, almost like they knew I had been watching. The moment, everything changed. For several years after that, nothing else major happened. Then last week changed everything. My family had taken a trip to Paris. My older brother had been dating his girlfriend for years, and everyone suspected he might propose during the trip. One evening, we were all sitting in a small bar together. Halfway through my drink, I happened to glance across the room, and I froze. Sitting alone at another table was a man who looked extremely familiar. Bald, muscular, thick eyebrows, It was the same man I had seen in my neighbor's kitchen years earlier. At least I was almost certain it was. At first I told myself it had to be a coincidence. But then he looked directly at me. Our eyes locked for a few seconds. And in that moment, I felt absolutely sure he recognized me too. Without finishing his drink, the man suddenly stood up and walked out of the bar. I followed him immediately, but by the time I stepped outside, he was gone. A few days later, it happened again. While we were sightseeing during the day, I saw him standing across the street holding a professional camera. It looked like he was taking pictures, and the camera seemed pointed in our direction. When he noticed me staring, he quickly turned and disappeared into a side street. That's when I finally told my parents everything, and for the first time, my dad looked genuinely scared. What we believe now. When we returned home, my dad checked all of the security cameras again. He didn't find anything new, but he finally admitted something to me. The SUV he saw years ago wasn't the only time a strange vehicle had appeared near our house. There had been several other nights when unfamiliar cars slowly drove past our property. He just never told us because he didn't want to scare the family. Now, we're starting to think all of those events might be connected. The SUV, the flashlights, the hidden camera, the neighbors watching our yard, and the man we saw in Paris. The question that keeps me awake. Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe we're connecting dots that were never related. But if someone really has been watching my family for more than a decade, there's one question I can't stop thinking about. Why? What possible reason could anyone have to monitor an ordinary family for so many years? I don't have an answer yet. But something tells me this story isn't over. And if the person who has been watching us is still out there, then whatever they're planning might only be getting started.